Hi everyone. Here we are again with another podcast with Akash Mukherjee this time. He has been a great engineer. He has some great experiences working in big tech, especially with big tech giants like Apple and Google. So we'll talk about how he got in and what are stuff like that. So welcome him and thank you so much Akash for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, Sitesh, for having me. It's always great to, chat with like-minded people and people who share the same aspirations and, try to help out each other.
Yeah, definitely. So while we are at it, so why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, so currently I'm a senior security architect for Apple's AI/ML. So what we do is basically, what I can say about it is basically all the things that you see with your Apple phones, devices, and all of those things, the AI applications. My job is to basically architect the systems and the security part of it.
Awesome. I don't know how much you'll be able to talk about that, but it's very interesting considering all of the new areas Apple is going in with AI stuff. So, and also huge congratulations to you on the release of your new book. I'll attach the new book in the description. So why don't you go about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I this was an experiment that I always wanted to do. So I have a like not just one, but very strong opinions about how security should be and how security should not be. Working in the industry for over a decade now, uh, a lot of the ways that I see security is like, it's against software engineering teams, stopping them from doing things. And being a software engineer myself, I never liked it. So, for a really big chunk of my career so far, I have been working as a software engineer in multiple security teams,
Mm-hmm.
and I understand the pain from both sides. So the idea with the book was like, just build the mindset into software engineers,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of having security teams do all the work, scale that security mindset across your organization. And how do you build a robust, secure software architecture? So the book's title is called Defense in Depth, which is one of the very common security strategy across the industry. And today, with the threats that every online activities are facing, that's
Mm-hmm.
basically the only way to do it. But the goal of the book is basically to go through each and every layer and understand the rationale behind why security is important. I don't think I need to explain that part anymore too much, given what happened over, even just look at the last month, what happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think with increasing adoption of AI and things going out of hand and humans control, I think these things are going to pop up more and more. So yeah, encourage anyone who is in either, interested in security or you're in software engineer want to build the way I say it is a bit strong and straight. If you want to keep your promises to your users and you want to get started somewhere, this is a great book to be,
Mm-hmm.
where I explain it from the start and how to integrate security into your software development day-to-day job.
Yeah, that's amazing. And talked about a very interesting thing that a lot of the things happening around with AI ML stuff, like just barging everywhere, it's very important to manage the securities that we have right now. And
Mm-hmm.
also, like how you decided to go for a book instead of writing a couple of blogs, and what was the process like? How did you find the publisher and all stuff? Can you just walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. So I think to answer the first question, why a book, not a bunch of a series of posts, right? So I think the idea was I wanted to tell a story that ties the entire security and the need of security and how to do security in a scalable and efficient way, which does not block software engineering in general.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, if you are building a product, you are going to generate revenue from that product, not by doing security.
Yeah.
However, at the same time, if you have seen like all the AI companies who are leading, for example, let's say OpenAI,
Mm-hmm.
Anthropic, Google, all of these companies are talking about security being their most important thing. I'm not sure if you have listened to the podcast on when Lex had Sam Altman on his podcast. He was like, the technology that we are building, not just OpenAI, but all the other companies as well, is going to be so powerful that it needs to make like we need to make sure it's secure. And that is why you see a lot of governments coming in and trying to put regulations and all of those things. So security is in the forefront because we don't want a Terminator coming in and destroying our society at some point. So, so all of these combined, I think this is the time where like understanding and including this as part of the regular day to day. I think the other part is like, culturally, the companies that I have worked for, like, Google is very strong on security in terms of they put a lot of focus and effort in security. One of the core values was respect the user.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I need any explanation for Apple in general. Apple is generally like, it's known for its privacy and security. And that is one of the key differentiator for them as well. I don't want to speak for the company. This is just my own opinion again. But all of these companies definitely shaped my way of thinking in terms of how security should be. And the idea goes like, directly into any product or company that you are working for, building, or anything like that. At the end of the day, it is run by your customers or
Yeah.
users. And if you don't keep your promises to your users and your users don't feel safe interacting with you on
Mm-hmm.
your application, it's just not going to work in the long
Yeah.
term. So it is in the basically it's for the company if you say it from that perspective. So yeah, that's why I wanted to tell that story in a way that resonates, not just in like short posts.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably cover some of the topics in deeper dives into short post, which just goes into like the hows of the things, and this is more
Yeah.
of like at a much higher level and conceptual. And the second question, coming to your second question, how did this get started? So I think randomly someday I was reached out by someone from the publishing team and like asking me like do you want to write a book? And I was like, no, I don't think so. I don't even think I am capable of writing a book, writing anything that is more than 10 pages long, 20 pages long, like apart from design docs and all of those things, which are very focused. So I was definitely not prepared for any of this. I did not know. I like I honestly like growing up, I think up until I graduated from IIT, I did not read a single book cover to cover, like literally zero book cover to cover. And I was not a book reader. It's because whenever I opened up a book, I would just like, fall asleep or something like that. So it just did not work at that time, and I felt like how do people sit down and write so much that I can't even read? And things like that. It's not the quality of the authors are great. It's just me who is like, get just lost and distracted and whatnot. It's all on me.
Yeah.
But eventually, I think over the period of time when I saw the true development of my, across my career, one of the things that I learned is like, what you can learn from a book is irreplaceable. Like, of course, there are books that are not providing values, but there are lots of numbers of books like, that will provide value. One of the book that is always on the top of my mind, I think I recommend it left and right. Turn the Ship Around. Uh, Go ahead. I don't know if you have read it, but go ahead and
No, I
search for
haven't.
this book. This will change the perspective of how leadership works and how leadership should be. Things like that. So I think there are lots of things like, I don't think I write one leadership newsletter as well, but there are a bunch of other more famous and like, more with wider audiences write smaller posts, which are very actionable, very helpful. However, at some point, as I think any like, scientific, like when you have a science background, one of the things is you start asking questions, why should I do it? And for to answer that question, you need a good story, that good coherent story that just goes beyond like that. Some
Mm-hmm.
of the nuances sometimes makes a lot of difference. So that is why I started feeling okay. We have a problem. Security is mostly today, approving software teams going to security teams for approval. They're denying for n number of reasons that does not even make sense to the software team, and then going into escalations of getting like explicit approval from the director that we'll do it some at some later point, and this the list grows on, and at the end of the day nothing happens. Who is the impacted person here? It's the user. And I think as an industry, we need to make certain changes around the way we do this things.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's where I just wanted to put some opinions out
Oh,
there for
amazing.
people to read.
Yeah, I think I'll definitely check that out. Turn your ship around. I'll definitely check that
Turn
out.
the ship
So
around. Yeah.
turn the ship around. Okay, I'll
It
I'll probably ask for some more recommendations of books. Probably a list in the description or something of this video. So that will be interesting for the audiences. So coming back to your career, I think you did your graduation or your post graduation from USC, right? And all of the careers look like you have nailed that I want to be a security engineer somehow, right? So
Mhm.
was that a choice, or how did you come up so strongly with being a security engineer itself?
Yeah, so that's a funny story. So actually, when I got into my undergraduate college, I chose electronics at that time. Electronics, and during my first year, I just did not like the hardware part, but I liked the other part of the electronics. So that's where I started exploring, okay, what do I do? So during my second year, I transitioned a lot into like interests and programming and all of those things. So the whole second year, I spent a lot of the time in building my programming skills and as a general software engineer. And at that point, I felt, okay, so now I want something specific to focus on because software engineering is so vast. I want to focus on a particular area. So that's where I started working with a bunch of open source projects who happened to be in security at that time. I was not really into I was a 18-year-old kid. I didn't know what I was doing. And I just got in touch with this. And the other thing is, I'm talking about 2010s and stuff. So at that time, security was not even if you look at companies today, very few companies care about security in reality. They say all the things in their corporate statements, but very few actually care about security today, sitting 2024. If you think about 2010s, nobody cared about security that much. However, only thing they cared about, there exist a bunch of hackers who hack into things. So that seemed pretty cool as an 18-year-old kid. So I started digging into it, and then that was just the beginning. By the end of my my 4 years, I was like, okay, now I did a bunch of different things, but I have no idea why I did it. So I decided to do masters, came here at USC, and that's where everything picked up. And yeah, during all the time, one of the things that I would, if anyone is at that situation, one of the things I would highly recommend is there's this misconception about security engineers and not software engineers is that because a lot of the security if you divide look into security, there's this conceptual security who has been traditionally saying things like you should not do this and you should do
Yeah.
this. I think that model needs to change a little bit, and all security, this is again my opinion, all security engineers need to be able to be great software engineers before even going into security.
Oh, that is interesting. So you want people to know about softwares, work with softwares, and then switch to security domain. That will be a
Yes.
better use
Yeah,
case.
so yeah, I think in my opinion, the ground base level is going to be you are a software engineer. Security is just a specialization like database, OS, networking, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is if you don't understand software engineering, you would always say, don't do this, don't do that. You would not say okay, we have to do this. How do we do it? That's the different mentality and switch of mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Okay, you have worked with some cool companies like Google and Apple, right? So can you just summarize like what are the cultural differences or technical differences in like couple of sentences?
Yeah. So I think between companies, there's a lot of things that work locally for them. For example, I think Google's one of the best thing about Google is it is very, very engineering driven. What that means is as engineers, we were able to contribute to the things that the company would do. I used to work for Chrome, and like I was able to convert my starter project, which was supposed to be a 6-month long project, into something that is still going on today at Google,
Okay.
even after I left the team. So it went on for about still 6 years or 7 years or something like that. So that is only possible when you have a very strong engineering driven company. So that is the best thing about Google. It
Mm-hmm.
is completely engineering driven. It has its shortcomings, but hey, I enjoyed it as an engineer.
Nice.
Um, coming to Apple is much more structured. I think one of the things I really appreciate about Apple is the vision that they have to produce the best, like whatever, whatever they're building, they want to be the best. If not best, they would just like scrap it. So that is a very, very deep sense that is rooted into every single team. And whatever they are trying to do, they want to do it the best. So, you know, there are some differences and like, the priorities and things like that.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's pretty much, the biggest things for both those companies for me.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think I have been facing a different type of culture with every company, and I think the vision matters a lot with the kind of product we're building. And I think Apple is spearheading the quality journey on the hardware side, on the software side, to a lot stronger extent. So definitely, that will be one of the value principles that Apple is following across all of its teams. Amazing. So let's talk about your writing journey. You have been writing quite a lot on your newsletters and all stuff. So how do you differentiate what to write in a newsletter or what goes in another book? You probably might be writing another book. So
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the fundamental difference is basically what we just covered a little bit, is when it is very specific problem that I am trying to just share my mistakes and what I learned from them,
Mhm,
it is most likely going to be a post. However, when you want to change the mindset of how people think, it is
mhm,
much more nuanced, because it's not going to be like this was my mistake and this is how you should, like, what I did to get over it. And you can probably benefit from it, and then change the perspective into, okay, now we think about this. How about we think about the same problem in a different way? Because, like, then the chapters and all of those things come in. So that is the fundamental difference that I make. And the other thing is, a lot of the times it really depends. So, like for example, I write currently majority of my focus in terms of the online writing goes into the newsletter, which is about leadership styles.
yeah.
And again, there are some ways of leadership that I have experienced myself that I did not like, and some I did like. And speaking with a bunch of folks, everybody preferred the ones that I also like. So it's just pretty much it's there is no gray area in here. It's pretty much zero and one. Which one is a better way to do it? So, however, there are bunch of online resources available out there of doing the right thing. Like for example, one of the newsletters that I really resonate with is like Irina from who used to work at Google at some point, now writes the Caring Techie newsletter. So there are bunch of online resources like that. But my question before I started writing was like, there are so many resources. It's not hard. Why is it not adopted so much? Because most of the people I talk to in my friends, the network, and everyone is complaining about their leadership. So yeah, that is where it started. And I just hope to, yeah, continue some of those things. Like, I try to be consistent every week on Friday morning is when I write. And for the book part, it's much more time consuming and painful process. Like, book is like, you start with a draft, you go through bunch of different editorial reviews, then go through technical reviews if it's a tech book, and then all of those shenanigans come in. It is much more intensive, so it really needs to be divided into pockets of like, when you can fit it in your schedule. But
Yeah.
always have a mind. I have two ideas about two different books, and started drafting some of those things, but it's like casual at the moment.
Oh, that is awesome. So yeah, the folks who are listening, I think Akash runs a very interesting leadership letters newsletter. So he writes a bunch of different interesting articles in there. Do check it out. Like it's for the writers as well. I see a couple of articles for writing well or starting to write well. I think I read a couple of those, and it's very interesting. So and thank you, and obviously best of luck for your next book, whatever you're writing. So yeah. And coming back to your schedule, you said managing your schedule is a very important thing, right? So as you grow on your career in the ladder, the time is something which kind of gets impacted a lot. So how do you manage your time working with big companies, managing blogs, writing books, and all stuff?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that that there is a clear differentiation that I wanted to make between, okay, these are my personal hours and these are my, work hours. However, as you go up, those things get blurry over time. But I tend to be that's just me. How my schedule works is I tend to be very I go to sleep very late. I don't recommend it, but yeah, that's just me. So what ends up happening is since I'm in the Pacific Coast where Apple's most like Apple or any other company's majority of work is happening, and not to say other parts are not important, but it's just the teams I have been part of is majority of them is centered around it. So after business hours, the after 6 p.m. the traffic drops off to a very good extent. So in that zone, I think it lets me basically do certain other things, which is and again, I don't want to make money off any of these extracurricular things, and the reason is I want I believe information should be free, uh, which is probably influenced by where I worked at before, like Google, and that's why I want to make sure, yeah, not making any money. However, I want to prioritize on the consistency because that is one of the core things I believe in. Is there's this certification I did one time, long time ago, which is to call there was this motto of try harder,
Hmm.
and that is just so ingrained in me, whenever I feel like I'm not able to do it, like for example, today's Thursday, tomorrow Friday morning I have this newsletter going out. However, at this point I did not literally get any time this week to go, the post is written and everything like that, but I needed to go back and check some last checks and things like that. I don't know when I'm gonna do it. My schedule today is also pretty bad, but yeah, I'm I'm always gonna push through and then say this is non-negotiable and things like that.
So what you said about
um
the certification, like, is that something, a course that you took, or?
yes, so this was a course, hands-on hacking course, I would say, that I
Oh,
did back in the day, and one of the motto was the goal in those that particular certification, you break into machines, so they will give you the IP address and then you just need to figure out how to get your way into the machine and get to root, or if it's Windows administrator basically. So the funny thing is there used to be some admins who would basically be there to he not help you but provide you subtle hints,
okay.
and all they did was whenever you asked any question they would just say try harder,
Okay.
and that just stuck with me because it took me, I think, 4 months to get this certification. You need to crack enough number of machines, and then you need to take an exam which is 48-hour long.
48 hours
No
long?
sleep, nothing.
Oh
Yeah,
my
no
God.
sleep, nothing. You just continue on like 5 machines. You need to break them, and you need to break at least four, and things like that. So the funny
Intense.
thing is admins always used to say try harder. So it stuck, and I think it is a great mantra. At least it works for me. Whenever I'm in a difficult situation, the things is a lot of the times we start thinking about lots of different things and ways it can go wrong,
Mm-hmm.
instead of focusing on things we control. So try harder is the mantra that keeps you on that path. Okay, you did something, it didn't work, that's okay, just try harder.
Okay. And it's good thing is like it fits everywhere, right? Okay, it's not working,
It
try
fits
harder.
everywhere.
You're out of
Yeah,
job, try harder. Cool.
yeah, exactly.
Interesting. So, okay, we have talked enough about work. So, what do you do apart from work? Like, how do you chill and how do you relax yourself?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the best ways I relax myself is to read books. I haven't read books until I was like 20, 21, but since then I started reading books like left and right. So read books all the time, whenever I get a chance. And I also follow a bunch of creators. I think there's this great community. Like for example, Jordan Cutler is one of the favorite creators. Raviraj is also another one. Like some of these creators, one of the thing is when you read, one of the things is you can only have live finite amount of years in your life. You can't
Yeah.
go beyond like 1,000 years or something like that. However, when you start learning from others and others' experiences, then you can scale it much better. So I think that is where I spend a lot of the time, and it's quite relaxing, surprisingly. I don't feel like whenever these posts come out from all of these folks, it might seem a lot, but to be honest, like, I find myself during my day, I'm distracted for 5 minutes here and there. During those times, if I can use it to something good, then it just becomes productive. It clears my head and also gives me an idea about certain situations in the future. So I always, put these pockets in between task and like context switches, and that helps in the way of, just relax a little bit, take off from like, a problem that you're stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Other than like all of these, growth careers things, one of the things I definitely do is like, I hang out with my wife and my kid.
Oh.
And by kid, I mean, I have a dog. So, yeah, it's a golden retriever. So I basically, it needs a lot, he needs a lot of attention. And so, that's where a lot of my energy goes as well.
Oh, cool.
Apart from that, I used to play soccer a lot, but that has stopped for last 3, 4 years. But yeah, these are some of the things that I do, and sometimes I also
Cool.
go on drive just to, yeah, just to
I think,
relax.
yeah, I think very interesting point. So the filling of small timings with these newsletters is pretty interesting. But I do that, but sometimes the major issue I face is like how do you select what to read at that point? Like do you maintain a list somewhere or like because at this point my LinkedIn feed is like filled with bunch of newsletters and all stuff, right? So I try to save them, but when I go back and check the saved list, I probably hardly read all of them.
Yeah,
Like, right?
yeah.
So how do you feel that this is a big problem, or how do you manage this?
Yeah, so I think I subscribe to a bunch of different newsletters, and the reason is like, it's not necessary. For example, some of the writers that I have mentioned so far in this conversation, I probably don't. I probably read a lot, but not 100%. That is what I'm gonna say. And the reason is sometimes some of the conversations that that happens is probably something I can't resonate very closely with, and like
Okay.
don't understand quite well, um, or something that I don't anticipate it will happen to me. So
Mm-hmm.
the idea is like, for example, for me, the learning, like there are situations. One of the things, the gotcha is like, you can't predict what happens to you tomorrow. However, you
Yeah.
have a pretty good idea of what is likely to happen versus what is like, on the other end of the spectrum. It is very, very unlikely to happen to you. For example, let's say, like if it's a post which is about like getting into software engineering, right? For me, it is probably one of the most useful or most popular posts from some of these creators. However, it is probably not somewhere I see myself coming across again because
Yeah.
I already went through some of those steps. So I think this is the first filter that I apply as soon as it comes in. And after that, I definitely had a priority list in terms of like, some of the creators that I closely follow and resonate
Mm-hmm.
with. And then there are a bunch of creators that I also follow. So I think there are multiple filters, like you have, like, probably guessed at this point. Like, at the first, it's do I resonate at all with this
Mm-hmm.
topic? If yes, then it goes back into a, like, not a list, but a mental map, to be honest. Because one of the things I avoid doing is like you said, the biggest struggle is when you start adding things to, as backlog. It's very hard to get into, right? If you look at the projects, but now you moved into Amazon, not just Amazon, any big tech company has this problem of like there are just too many backlogs, they never get prioritized. So that is something that I learned with projects and stopped. Like, I never tried it with newsletters because I knew it's if my I tried to put this in backlogs, it's never going to be read. However, I think a good strategy might be is like, let's say you dedicate some time, maybe 15 minutes a day, maybe Saturday for 2 hours or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Go in and then go through as much or as many as you can, with the idea not being as many, idea being like, remembering what was said in that, like trying to change. I think one of the most important thing reading anything is that it should change your state, or at least confirm a belief, or like validate something that you believe in. So if either neither of these things are happening, then it's probably you're just reading too quickly and just reading it for the sake of reading. So to make sure that balance is there, I like, read it slow enough but fast enough to cover as much.
Oh, that is a very interesting and deep insight. Like it should change your state while you're reading because you're reading to gain something out of it, and your entropy or your state of equilibrium should change after that, right? It should not be like you're in the same
Yeah,
state of equilibrium
yeah,
that you're in. Very interesting. So yeah, it was. It's okay. I'll give it a try. I think I had a conversation with Jordan in the last podcast, and
yeah.
he exactly said the same thing. Like try to block a certain time, like probably every day, like 15-20 minutes, so that you can figure out stuff, or fix certain time of the day where you can like just read this blog articles or stuff. Very interesting. I'll try to keep up with that. Cool. So coming to the most important and interesting question, what everyone asks is like how to grow up in a career. So like, why don't you tell about security perspective or a software engineer perspective? Like someone is watching this
Yeah.
and is a junior engineer straight out of college. They want to do a lot more in their life. What do you suggest them?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I just saw, so this is going to be a little bit biased. I just saw a LinkedIn post, I think, coming out of Jordan, where he mentioned he launched a course on Maven or something about being the go-to person. I think that is literally the number one, thing. I think as like, if you're graduating from college or university, one of the first things, I think again, this goes back into being personal decisions that you need to make. What do you
Mm-hmm.
want out of your first 5, 10 years of your career? Do you want to grow fast? Do you want to learn deep and things like that? So growing fast and learning deep is a little bit different. I think the idea, I think it's pretty famous, is like, you need to be a T-shaped developer. You need to have experience or expertise, try to build expertise in one very particular area. However, you need to be understanding the entire breadth of what's happening around your
Mm-hmm.
surrounding. So the best, I think, biggest advice for any software security or anyone in engineering, to be honest, is like just be curious. When you start being curious, you start asking a lot of questions. And when you start asking a lot of questions, you get to hear a lot of perspective. One of the things I have seen some of the, I have been there myself and I did this a lot, is like, I wanted to grow so fast that I would want to do things too quickly, in terms of like, for example, as simple as when I open up something, someone gave me a feedback, I'd straight jump in and just change it without thinking like, whether should I do it or not. Some of these things, what ends up happening is like, you are not really learning from that experience with that senior engineer.
Mm-hmm.
You are basically just following them. I think starting asking questions is not becoming slow. It's just understanding why some of the decisions and what was the thought process of this other person that they suggested this. It's that's probably going to be my top thing if I go back and try to optimize my career again.
Okay, awesome. So I think that brings us to end for this podcast. Now it was great chatting with you, Akash, and I think the listeners will have a lot of interesting time reading through your book or the blog you suggested. So any final recommendations before we wrap this up?
Recommendations about
Any reading or anything?
yeah, I think reading is difficult. Some of the times I have been there myself. Like, I never used to like a single page of book. Like, within 5 pages, I would just not be able to focus. And I think this is a very, very common issue. And the thing is, uh, the author is great, the everything is great. The problem with book is it does not provide you information up front, like to get you hooked and things like that, which you see like, the attention span going down for everyone.
Yeah,
And the most important thing in a LinkedIn post is the hook, how interesting the hook is.
yeah.
So books don't do that. Books are for the longer run. It takes longer time and commitment and all of those things, which is hard to provide. However, there are multiple websites and forums and things like that which rate some of these books and then basically says which one to read and which one not to read. So yes, I think if you're not reading books and listening to this, give it a try. Just give it enough. So the idea with anything new is there is this very steep curve initially, and
Yeah.
once you cross that, you start enjoying it. So just giving up, which I did at 5 pages, was probably not enough to get me hooked into the book and the idea. So start. I think one of the posts I'm going to recommend is go read one of the posts from Raviraj, who wrote very famous. I think it went viral or something on how to read books with less time. So
Mm-hmm.
basically what it talks about is start with summary, try to see if that provides any value for you and try to understand the story. I would highly recommend that don't just stop at summaries because that takes away all the nuances that the author is trying to say, and that just a lot of the times does not even make sense to a certain extent because you get very abstracted away ideas or concepts that would not make sense a lot of the time. So yeah, just use summary as your selector, and then
Mm-hmm.
once you select something, just go through the book and then read it. But yeah, that's pretty much the advice that I would have. But again, I understand if you are struggling to read a book. I was also like that.
Yeah, it's hard, but I think I'm catching up these days to end the distraction. Sometimes what I do is I read the white papers, but I print them out and read it with pen
Yeah.
and marker. That is so interesting and so much more concentrating because I don't get distracted. If I need to search a word,
Hmm.
then I know that paper is right in front of me. I'll search and then come back to the paper, not like I'll go and wander off in the whole world. So yeah, thank you
Yeah.
so much again for your time. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll connect again with
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
kind of conversations altogether. So thank you again.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was great chatting, and yeah, we'll keep in touch, and then we'll see.